Joining us now is member of the Foreign Relations Committee, Democratic Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. Good to have you on board this morning.
Hey, Chris, always great to have you on. We've been asking everybody, foreign policy experts this morning, what they thought, what they're thinking about the past 24, 48 hours of policy shifts from the Trump administration. What are your thoughts?
It's dizzying, and I think the only thing that's consistent about Trump's foreign policy so far is its inconsistency. Just wait a few days and it's going to change. And so I was heartened to hear President Trump say this week, just in the last 24 hours, that he's not planning on major military action inside Syria. But I don't think that we can take for granted the fact that this strike last week was the beginning and the end. We've got 500 to 1,000 troops inside Syria right now with a really undefined mission, and I think a lot of us worry about what the future of our policy is in Syria because it has shifted so rapidly and so consistently over the past week or so. So our allies are hyper confused right now. Members of Congress aren't sure what we should be authorizing and what we shouldn't be authorizing, and I'm not sure that it's going to settle down anytime soon.
Senator Murphy, it's Willie Geist. Good to see you. You've said that the airstrikes add to the chaos, is the way you put it. It adds to the carnage. It actually won't tip the balance one way or another, is a comment you made the other day. Do you think President Trump's strike, his response to the chemical weapons attack from the Assad regime, is not preferable to the precedent under President Obama, where the red line was drawn and nothing happened when the line was crossed?
Well, I've been pretty clear that I think that the president has to come to Congress to get authorization first. And so I think that makes it difficult for a U.S. president to draw red lines to the extent that you have to get authorization from Congress in order to enforce them. Probably should have chilled President Obama's enthusiasm for making that so clear rhetorically. But the fact of the matter is, this strike was illegal. It has to be authorized by Congress. And to the extent that there is a broader incoherence about our Syria policy, that's why Congress needs to come to the table here to try to straighten this out. Are we at war with Assad? What is our mission in and around Raqqa? Are we just helping the Arab and Kurdish forces retake that town, or are we going to help them hold and fight off a variety of factions that are going to try to get in? You know, that's why Congress has to weigh in here. That's in part why I oppose that strike.
I hear your legal question about it, but do you think more broadly that it was the right thing to do to strike Assad as a response to the chemical weapons attack?
I don't think it was, in part because you cannot be adding to the chaos inside Syria when you have a policy of locking those same children inside. If you are going to launch military strikes in and around these sensitive areas, then you have to have a humanitarian policy to help rescue them. So simply due to the inhumane refugee policy that this president has, I don't think it makes sense. And ultimately, I just worry that they don't have a plan to deal with the inevitable escalation that will come. If you don't know what steps 2, 3, and 4 are when the Russians and the Iranians step up their attacks in response to your missile strike, then the strike itself can't be effective.
Do you have confidence, Senator, in this foreign policy team, though, to deal with the inevitable?
You know, I have more confidence today than I did a few months ago. I think the most important thing that's happened for U.S. national security is the replacement of Michael Flynn with General McMaster. I think it looks as if some of our foreign policies are reverting a little bit to the norm because of his influence. But listen, Syria is a vexing problem, right? President Obama did not have a workable policy inside Syria, and President Trump doesn't have a workable policy, and that's all in part because of a general hubris that both administrations have had about our ability as Americans to affect the balance of power on the ground. I think we are going to have to step back and exercise some restraint militarily, understanding the limits of the blunt force of military power there. So I have more faith than I used to, but yeah, I mean, the way in which we are pitching back and forth between wanting Assad to go, not wanting Assad to go, signaling deeper military involvement, drawing lines in the sand as to what we'll do, it should be worrying to everybody watching this.
Richard Haass?
Senator, one of the reasons that people like me are skeptical of going to Congress for an authorization to use military force in Syria is we think the odds of getting any consensus are close to zero. And what you're more likely to have is people would be saying all the things we can't do. So rather than sending a signal of American resoluteness, it would send a signal of American weakness and division. What confidence do you have that you and your colleagues could reach any sort of a meaningful consensus?
Well, I think we could. We did on the Foreign Relations Committee when President Obama asked for authorization. We passed an authorization for military force that didn't ultimately get to the Senate because the deal with the Russians came in and took precedence. But if we didn't, Richard, that's for good reason. That's because our constituents are very wary of military action in the Middle East. And you know what? The president doesn't have the power to make war without us, just like he doesn't have power to change the tax rates of the nation if Congress doesn't give him the authorization to do it. Just because it's hard to get a measure passed through Congress doesn't mean that you can go around us. My constituents are very wary of U.S. military intervention in the Middle East again. They support this limited strike, but they don't support an authorization that perhaps gives the president open-ended commitment, which is why it would be hard to pass. So just because it's difficult to get something done in Congress doesn't mean that you can go around us. That's not what the Constitution says.
Senator Chris Murphy, thank you very much for being on the show this morning.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.